Ted Gunderson is a former FBI agent who investigated a man accused of killing his own family. Ted realized the man was innocent, and evidence showed it was a satanic ritual killing by intruders in the house.
Appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't know if you know it or not. Some of you do, some of you don't. Former head of the FBI, Los Angeles, California, retired in 1979, March. And shortly after my retirement, I was asked to investigate the Jeffrey R. McDonald case as a private investigator. He's a former Green Beret doctor who was convicted of murdering his wife and 2 children in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, February 17, 1970. The long story, I put in about 2,000 hours on the case. When the case first began, my investigation first began, I told Dr. McDonald that I would investigate the matter for him. He had just been convicted and was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences. I think I'm going to sneeze. I didn't make it. Okay. 3 consecutive life sentences. I told him if I found out that he was guilty, I would no longer be on the case. I would drop my investigation. Much to my surprise, from the evidence that I read, information that I developed over a period of several years, I've established beyond any question of a doubt that this man is absolutely innocent. And on October 25, 1980, I obtained a signed confession from Helena Stokely, the girl in the floppy hat, if you know the case. By the way, there was a best-selling book, Fatal Vision, and a movie out on this. And the girl in the floppy hat said that Dr. McDonald did not commit those crimes. They were committed by my satanic cult group. And it was my initiation into the cult that night. And she gave me detailed information about the movement within the house that night, who did what. And I said to her, Helena, how do I know you're telling me the truth? And so one of the questions I asked her, the whole series of questions I asked her, and this is on audio video, in some instances the video, but always on audio. She said, I said, Lena, tell me about describe the jewelry box on the dresser in the master bedroom. And she described it right to a T. And just to make sure, I went down to Sears Roebuck and got a catalog and brought it back, and I said, Helena, pick out the jewelry box in this catalog that was on the dresser. She picked out the jewelry box. It matched. Also, she told me that she attempted to ride a rocking horse in the child's bedroom that night, but she couldn't ride it because the spring was broken. The only way she could have known that spring was broken was to have been there the night of the murders, February 17, 1970. So anyway, I submitted a 1,200-plus page report, actually 1,100-plus page, almost 1,200 pages, in March of 1981 to the FBI, Judge Webster, with a personal letter. He was director of the FBI. And I said, Judge, I believe this man is innocent, and he'd run out of money, and, you know, I've continued to work it as I usually do. And I think that the FBI should continue along the lines of my investigation.
Next, the FBI tries to destroy the information on the satanic cult killings.
And much to my surprise, I started receiving, by the way, it also went to the FBI and to the U.S. Department of Justice, the Solicitor General's office. And much to my surprise, my witnesses, my 19 new witnesses, including Helena Stokely, started calling me and saying, hey, Ted, the FBI has interviewed me. They're trying to get me to recant. And I'm saying to myself, that isn't the responsibility of the FBI. The FBI is supposed to gather information, not destroy it. And that was my first clue that we had a serious problem in that case. And then I continued on, and I had a number of other cases that I handled privately. And in each instance, I noticed evidence was lost, destroyed, stolen. I noticed that there were strong indications of corruption. So I asked myself, now what's going on here? And over the years, I started gathering material until about 2 years ago. Up until about 2 years ago, I kept saying there's a loose-knit network operating in this country involving drugs, pedophilia, pornography, prostitution, corruption, etc., etc. 2 years ago, from my research, I'm convinced it's much more serious than that. It's more than a loose-knit network. It is a conspiracy. And you know how the news media comes after us when we use the word C, conspiracy, that C word. Well, they can come after me all they like, because I guarantee you right here and now, we do have a conspiracy, and I'm going to prove it to you here today. Now, one of the things that convinced me and really got me started in this regard, by the way, this conspiracy involves pornography, drugs, corruption, involves pedophilia, involves organized child kidnapping rings, the finders out of Washington, D.C., CIA cover, covert operation, involved in the international trafficking of children, terrorism, bank accounts, and it goes on and on. By the way, I strongly urge you to go to my booth after this lecture and get my research, my book and my research on missing children. We're going to go into that a little bit in the lecture. But my missing children lecture documents that the finders, an organization in Washington, D.C., this CIA front. It's a covert operation. They're involved in the international trafficking of children. And I have a U.S. Customs report, official U.S. Customs report, in my book on the missing children. So I urge you to get it. It's only $10. Now, if you buy any of my products, any of my research, I beg of you, I don't want you to buy it unless you make a half a dozen copies and send it to your friends, okay? The name of the game with me is not copyright. I could care less about copyright. The name of the game is education, education, education. We need to know what's going on in this country today. So anything, any of my research that you buy, please make copies and get them out to you.
Like the old people's homes now, only these are...
For the first time, Teresa is learning what it's like to live with love instead of fear.
Pretty though.
In this quiet English village, with the help of her mother, she's slowly repairing her broken life. Teresa is now 15, but at the age of 2, she was left in the care of this woman, the grandma she called Nan. And that, she says, is when her torment started.
Who was the leader? Who was the boss of the gang, of the cult?
At home, it was my nan.
Your Nan made you have sex with animals?
Yeah. Like goats and donkeys.
The story of Teresa is a story almost too horrible to recount. A case of child abuse that goes well beyond the kind of things we normally associate with the abuse of children. In 27 years of reporting, it has to be one of the most painful stories I have ever had to tell.
How many men or how many people would have sex with you?
What, at one time?
Yes.
About everyone who was there, which must have been about 20. You know, from 10 to 20 people. If it was a big ceremony, it used to be 30.
What would your grandma be doing when these men were forcing themselves on you?
Usually laughing. Or smiling. Or having sex with another man. Or other men.
A chronicle of debauchery and depravity so horrific it's hard to believe. You have to ask yourself, could Teresa be just making it up?
No. I know what's true and what's not. No, I know what I saw.
Children don't make up elaborate lies that this would have to be if it was a lie, which I know it is not. It isn't.
This couldn't be a terrible dream, a nightmare that you're reliving?
No. It's no dream. It's a nightmare, but it's not one you can wake up from. It's there all the time.
This really happened, you're quite sure of that?
Yeah.
The police don't think Teresa made up a story. Some of the cult members are to stand trial. 5 men have been charged with rape. As for Nan, the grandmother, she's 61 and lives in this council flat in South London. She's charged on 7 counts of aiding and abetting rape and 2 counts of performing abortions on Teresa. If you're finding this hard to believe, so did I at first. But then there are the medical reports, evidence of sustained sexual abuse. And there's this, a statement prepared for 60 Minutes by Teresa's psychiatrist. It says, "In my opinion, Teresa's account is not the product of a psychotic illness, nor the figment of a fertile imagination. I believe her to be telling the truth."
As I've heard from men who says they've done it.
You've dealt with other cases like hers?
Yes.
21 cases like hers, he says, in the past 2 years alone.
Themes like they were put in boxes with spiders and worms, where they were trapped in fear, where there was a high use of excrement and urine, where there was talk of human sacrifice.
Take just one of those rituals, putting children in boxes with spiders and worms. Now, listen to what Teresa told her mother.
And they had a coffin-like box that children were put in with spiders and snakes and the lid shut and left in there. I would have come out deranged. I could not have coped with that mentally at all.
And endured.
During these ceremonies, was Satan, the devil, ever referred to?
He was called Lucifer.
What did they say about the devil, about Lucifer?
That killing the people made him happy.
Sacrifices to please the devil. According to Teresa, the worst rituals took place at a house somewhere in the country.
It was big, you know, expensive. From the front it looked like a castle. You know, it had a long drive and big double wooden doors.
Do you think they were rich people then?
Very rich.
Now, where was this big house somewhere in the country? Teresa says she can't take the police there because the Satanists made sure she'd never know how to find it.
Teresa was always drugged, or on a couple of occasions she says she was knocked out, so that she never fully knew the route.
There was a tramp who was brought in once, you know, and he was killed. He was cut from his throat down to his stomach, and they ate him, or bits of him.
They killed a man at a ceremony?
Yeah.
In front of you?
Yeah, in front of all of us.
Did the tramp, did this man fight back?
No, I think he was, you know, drunk or something. He seemed really dopey. He was laughing a lot when he was brought in. And he started screaming when they began to cut. But after a while, you know, he died.